Hello everyone, welcome to the Joget webinar, a live demo on Hashgraph Application Studio with a focus on the government and the public sector team. My name is Penny and I'm your moderator for today's demo session. In this demo, we will showcase how you can visually build a decentralized application that interacts with the Hedera ecosystem, all the way from Hedera consensus service, generating Hedera accounts, sending transactions and minting tokens, and at the same time, exploring the different opportunities for implementations in the government sector. Before we dive in, let's go over some housekeeping items. First of all, today's session will be recorded, and if you miss out any of our sessions today, no worries as you will have the access to the recording later. If you have any questions in between the session, do not hesitate to reach out to us via the chat or the Q&A button in the Zoom control panel. We will get to it as many as we can at the end of the webinar. Moving on, you will also be directed to a feedback form after today's session. And as always, we are happy to hear about your webinar experience. Your opinions matter to us, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment and provide your feedback for an improved webinar to attend in the future. Last but not least, stay till the end with us for a series of video tutorials and how you can redeem your free Joget Academy voucher. Today, we have the pleasure to have Sabrina, who is the Head of FinTech and Payments Funds at the HBAR Foundation. We have Andrew Forson, who is the Head of Growth at the Hashgraph Association. And we have Justin Wee, who is the Special Projects Technology Manager at Joget. They will shed light on the integration between Joget low-code, no-code with Hedera Hashgraph, along with how the Hashgraph Application Studio release marks a huge leap forward in making dApps development and Hedera ecosystems more accessible for everyone to fully utilize the Hedera's capabilities. Sabrina, Andrew, and Justin, would you like to say hi to the audience?
Hi everyone, to all the audience, I would like to welcome you to this webinar session, and I'm really looking forward to showing off the capabilities of the Hashgraph Application Studio. I'll let Sabrina jump in now.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you everyone for joining.
So let's take a look at today's agenda. To start with, we will first have a quick introduction on Hedera and the Hashgraph Application Studio, followed by the Hashgraph Association introduction and a live demo to showcase the key features of the platform, along with how you can make use of Joget Generative AI plugin to quickly generate an app skeleton by providing prompts and instructions, so you can focus on the more exciting aspects of the dApps development to create more capabilities that interact with the Hedera network. Without further ado, I will now pass it over to Sabrina to kickstart the session. Sabrina, over to you.
Thanks a lot. So give me 1 minute to share my screen, and please let me know when that's on. So yeah, I will kick off by providing a little bit of background on Hedera for those who are maybe not very familiar with Hedera as a decentralized ledger technology. And then also kind of shed some light on why we decided to work with Joget on this Hashgraph Application Studio. Can you see this slide? It's entitled "The Promise." Just want to make sure we're synchronized. Okay, great. So great that it's working now. So the field of decentralized ledger technology, or some people just narrow it down to blockchain, but just generally speaking, opened up about 15 years ago with a promise, which is a fair and trusted results at scale, starting with value transfer. That's kind of like the first use case with early blockchains like Bitcoin through digital currency or cryptocurrency. But that use case kind of started getting larger with things like identification, ownership of things like land, like digital assets on the financial end of the spectrum, like IP. And then smart contracts were born, which allowed for trustless agreements between multiple participants. adding some programmability to the management of digital assets, and then allowing to address markets, so things like matching and settlement of contract participants. So it's a technology that can address a number of use cases. That's the promise is to disrupt all these areas, but there are limitations to the early blockchains. So like chains like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they do have limitations in terms of the amount of energy that they consume, especially the ones that are focused based on a proof of work consensus. There is also a limit to the throughput. So it's both the speed of processing, but also the number of transactions that can be processed in a given amount of time. There's unpredictable costs because of variation in the gas fees. There's security issues for proof of stake blockchains. So you have this and then there's the centralization issues because you have a trade-off between security, decentralization, and then throughput. So that's called the blockchain trilemma. So Hedera kind of set out to address those issues by creating a third generation decentralized ledger that would marry performance, security, stability, would have a strong governance and also a network that's fully stable. And I know it sounds like a low bar by Web 2 standards, but blockchain was quite far off where it started. So Hedera, by using an innovative consensus mechanism that is different from blockchain, is allowing to get to that performance. So you get to 10,000 transactions per second. You get to finality in about 5 seconds, and usually 3 to 5 seconds. There's EVM compatibility, so you can use smart contracts. It's highly secure, so it's double denial service resistant. And I'm not going to go into the details, but essentially there's no leader node, so there's very little surface of attack, because if you want to attack the network, you have to attack every node. It's highly stable, both in terms of the network itself, but also in terms of the transaction fees, because they're priced in USD as opposed to priced in crypto. So they're payable in crypto, priced in USD. That means if you manage your H bar properly, then you don't have surprises in terms of your transaction fees. The governance, I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail, but essentially the nodes in charge of governance, the entities in charge of node operation also take part in the governance of and the stewardship of Hedera, both from a technical and a business perspective. And it's also a highly sustainable network. It has the lowest carbon footprint of all public networks. And it's whatever little emissions come from Hedera actually offsets. So it's essentially carbon negative infrastructure. So under the hood is, at the core, is the Hashgraph consensus that you can see at the base, which is a gossip protocol. So I'm not going to go too much into the details because I want some time for the demo. But then there's 3 layers of services on top of that: the consensus service, the token service for token issuance. The consensus service itself is more of a messaging orderer. Token service is for issuance of digital assets, NFTs, so fungibles and non-fungibles. And then there's a smart contract service for added programmability. But the token service in itself actually has a lot of features under the hood. So for a lot of things, you actually don't need a smart contract. And there's a number of use cases from startups to enterprise, B2B, B2C. So it is very broad, and today we'll focus more on the government and public sector. Hedera is a permission network, but it's public, so it's quite unique. So these are the 29 organizations that make up the Hedera Governing Council. They actually operate the nodes, and they make big decisions in terms of the roadmap, in terms of the network fees, for example, token economics, etc. So the Hedera ecosystem is quite broad. There's more than 15,000 developers. There's hundreds of applications. The mainnet has been live since 2019, so about 4 years now. And today I checked the transactions, TPS were 2,000 per second, which is probably it's the most utilization of all public DLTs. And yeah, when I checked just before this webinar, 31 billion transactions to date in 4 years, and more than 3 million accounts on the mainnet. These on the left, these are some of the applications that are built on Hedera, but there's, it's already quite outdated. There's many, many more since. So we're focusing today a little bit more on government and public sector use cases. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of some of the areas that are relevant. So identity is it's a big theme, identity and credentials. So it could be your ID, it could be your diplomas, it could be your driver's license. A lot of these are either issued directly by your government, or your town, or your university, or public university, or and such. There's financial applications. That in itself is very broad. That could be the topic of an entire webinar. It could be central bank digital currencies. It can be additional infrastructure. Essentially, the financial applications for government. A lot of them focus on financial inclusion. But it allows also government to do things like maybe tax revenues at the source, create some efficiencies, etc., etc. There's asset ownership, so things like land, like your house title, your car title. There's energy management, sustainability. So a lot of utility companies are public. You could manage decentralized grid on the blockchain, especially if you're looking at renewable energy. There's healthcare, of course, patient records. It's very important to get them secured. There's all the government operations, transparency, things like voting. If you want to you can use blockchain to show its tamper proof. And of course, there's a lot of infrastructure related applications, like your connected infrastructure. So, I mean, that's not exhaustive, but those are some of the key use cases. So, Joget and Hedera, why did we decide to work with Joget and low code and get into low code no code? Well, first of all, it's a trend that's getting bigger every year. Developers now are by and large not necessarily working in a formal IT department anymore. And many of these tend to use low code and no code tools. 80% by 2026, up from 60% 2021. And also, there's a shortage of tech talent. There's increasing needs. There is also trends that were started by COVID, like hybrid and borderless workforce that kind of is here to stay. And it's a lot easier to work low code, if you're part of that workforce. There's demands for hyper automation, composability of applications. It's a lot easier to develop on a platform like Joget if you want to have a robust applications that can be made to be composed and modular. And on the right says some of the reasons why companies use low-code platforms, essentially to accelerate digital innovation, reduce the IT backlogs. Those are some of the top ones. but also some companies have shortage of people with technical skills, and that also helps address the issue. And so some of the benefits that we can see from a Hedera integration with Joget specifically, for us, like one of the missions at the HBAR Foundation is to make sure that developers have access to Hedera, that they're able to build in a painless way. So we find that it provides a more easier learning curve for less experienced developers. And it also helps businesses that don't necessarily have, like a full development team in-house. So they could be small and medium businesses, or they could be actually larger enterprises, but that are not like, that don't really have tech in their DNA. So we know that development time, goes down by almost 60% when using low code versus traditional development. So we felt like, hey, we need to have some sort of representation there. And of course, especially during the challenging times, having increased agility for a company in terms of their tech stack, it's an advantage. It's a survival advantage, and obviously you're able to price the reduction in development costs because you're developing so much faster, and you're able to iterate and get to product market fit faster. So, why we pick Joget in particular? So we were like, well, first of all, we're very impressed with the product. It's a proven tech stack. It's open source. Joget itself has a global reach. There's users across the globe. And also we like that it's not a focus on Web3 natives, because, we have our own, network of developers in the Web3 world that is aware of Hedera, but we also wanted to give Hedera some exposure beyond these blockchain communities. So it was a good complement. And the Joget user base is really broad, right? It's individuals, it's universities, SMEs, Fortune 500s, governments. It really spans a broad range. And also some of the industries that are covered by Joget are a good fit for Hedera, because Hedera is a very enterprise-friendly DLT. So things like healthcare, finance, insurance, manufacturing, etc. So yeah, and of course I have the Joget team, because the whole team, from Ravish to Justin to Andrew, Penny, everyone has been super enthusiastic, has been really understanding Hedera very well, and has been really great at delivering. So I can't thank you guys more. And so yeah, so we've been very blessed to have this developer studio, and also Joget fronting some of the developer focused activities. So there was a hackathon that was very well attended with Chitkara University in India, and also showing that by virtue of who managed to win that hackathon was actually a first-year student in computer science. So by using Joget, actually, that really lowered the entry barrier. Which means that a first-year student that has maybe very limited development skills can actually win, versus maybe there's like third-year or fourth-year students that have a lot more experience. So we felt like, that really validated the fact that Joget can lower the entry barriers for developers. So with that, I'm really excited to see the demo with you guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Sabrina, for the enlightening sharing. Okay, so while I'm putting up my screen, I hope the audience now has a better understanding on Hashgraph on the Hedera ecosystem. And with that, I'm going to pass the floor over to Andrew to kickstart the Hashgraph Association introduction. Andrew, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Penny. Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you for helping us along the way with this Joget and Hedera journey. I actually was a former team member of Joget as the global blockchain business lead, and I'm now the head of growth of the Hashgraph group, and I use Joget regularly. And I'd like to explain a little bit about who the Hashgraph group is. Could we move on from this slide, please, Penny? So the Hashgraph group has a mandate of basically facilitating development and supporting businesses and projects that develop on Hedera. And if we can move on from this slide. The Hashgraph Group is a part of the Hashgraph Association, which was established in December 2021 and is a strategic partnership with Hedera. And effectively, our objective is to assist businesses in the development of large applications that leverage Hedera. And next slide, please. So we have mission, vision, and values as aligned here. And our guiding principles are basically to raise awareness and broad adoption of Hedera, to foster a decentralized economy, enabling startups, enterprises, and governments to create a trusted digital future for all. And the manner in which we do that is in many regards through assessment. And our whole idea is to build a strong organizational culture focused on trust, integrity, and respect. Moving on. So one might ask how we actually achieve these objectives. It's basically in 4 areas: professional training, education, and accreditation, scaling. So we really help projects, businesses, large enterprises grow and expand through investment, financial support, strategic support, and engineering support. And that process also accelerates the growth of the Hedera ecosystem network of partners. And I think the last and most important part is our funding activities, which basically revolve around investing equity, creating joint ventures for projects and enterprises that are leveraging Hedera. We do have a global footprint. I'm actually speaking from Zurich right now, but we have a presence in Africa, Dubai. And with this will be my final slide, but the whole idea is to give you a sense of the programs that the Hashgraph Association has. So we run an innovation program, which is a great way for effectively a look at their first round of financing in many instances. And that financing that we do provide generally comes in 3 forms: a combination of cash, engineering support, and smart money, strategic money, which assists with commercialization. Our venture studio basically is the part that actually helps you build a project out so that it can be commercializable. We have Hashgraph partner programs, which works with system integrators that are seeking to partner in the development of Hedera applications and services. Certifications, which are training and certifications, and the part which I'm probably most closely affiliated with, the Venture Fund, which is the venture equity and investing arm. So you can see that we've created an ecosystem along with the H Fund Foundation, along with Hedera, of ensuring broader support of the technologies that leverage Hedera. And I think that's particularly relevant to bring my introduction to a close, because it is so easy to build applications using Joget that leverage Hedera. This Hashgraph Application Studio, in my view, presents a revolutionary term in terms of building Web3 applications in general, and in terms of deployments to build applications that leverage Hedera. It is faster, it is more direct, it is less risk prone, it is full stack, it is mobile friendly, out of the box on delivery. And so I myself am somebody who actively uses the Joget platform and the Hashgraph Application Studio. And with the support of H Fund, we were able to build certain integrations in the actual Hashgraph Application Studio, which makes it incredibly easy to deploy large-scale applications that you can prototype and run with quickly, and then refine until they are runtime applications and deploy them in that regard. So with that, Penny, I want to thank you, Joget. I want to thank Sabrina, and I want to segue on to Justin. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the most awaited demo session. Justin, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. So now we'll come to the demo portion of the Hashgraph Application Studio. To quickly run you down on what it is, basically the Hashgraph Application Studio is built on top of the foundations of Joget, a low-code, no-code application development platform. The difference here is you have all the necessary components along with the Hedera integration pack to allow you to start building blockchain apps immediately upon install. So right here is what we're seeing, the first page when we navigate to the Hashgraph Application Studio. Now, I just want to preface on this demo session, it will be slightly different from previous demo sessions, from previous webinar sessions that we have made. On previous webinar sessions that is already available on YouTube, we are deep diving on the tooling on how you configure the Hedera integrations along with your applications. But in this demo, we won't just only do that. We will now show you what other elements of the ecosystem within the Hashgraph Application Studio, along with other built-in features, can help you not just build apps, but also effectively maintain and proactively monitor your blockchain applications. So with that said, without further ado, I'm going to get diving into creating an application geared towards government. Now, for the use case today, I am planning to let's say, create an app regarding grant disbursements. So it's a use case that we're all quite familiar with, where we all wonder where our tax money is essentially going, right? Where what grants are being given to specific parties, and us as the public, we are demanding public transparency. We want it to be auditable at all times. So let's start creating our app geared for governments, a grant disbursement application. But rather than us having to create that app from absolute scratch, let's show you what we can take advantage of from the ecosystem. So if you're already using the Hashgraph App Studio, you can actually head over to the Joget Marketplace. If you have an account, you can go ahead and sign up. And we can download this plugin that was recently made available, the Generative AI plugin. And just to describe this in a nutshell, you can pretty much just describe what app you want, and it will be automatically generated for you within the Hashgraph Application Studio. And just to note, this will generate the majority of the skeleton. And depending on how specific you are on your prompts, it will give you that output. So I already have it installed on my App Studio. Let's see how it would work. So I'm going to create an app from scratch. And of course, we can just create it all manually, or we can start to take advantage of generative AI right now. So first of all, I'll give it a meaningful name. I'll call this the grant disbursement application. And next, all we need to do is configure the service. And in this case, I am using OpenAI's LLM model. And for this, to use OpenAI's GPT service, we just need to sign up for an account on OpenAI developer portal. Once you have an API key, simply paste it in here, and we're already ready to describe our application pretty much. So we'll let the LLM model perform most of the assumption. What we're going to do is simply describe our application the same way of how we would have described it to our own citizen developers. Because often when we're working with subject matter experts, there's a need to communicate with your citizen developers. But in this case, we are telling it to an LLM model, an AI model that will pretty much do all the studying for us. So let's see how it would look like when we create this application. So I'm going to describe first about how the application, what are we expecting from it. We can say that the grant application the grant applicant can submit their grant request to a grant officer, for example. Or let's say if we want to define specific categories for grants, we can also do that. So let's say applicants can submit the grant for healthcare, or if they want to, they can submit it for humanitarian aid. Okay, humanitarian aid. And let's say we also want to do it for social assistance, and so on and so forth, right? So we can let the AI perform the assumption for us. You also notice that I'm not specifying the form fields that we need. So the AI is going to also help us perform assumptions about the form, and no worries, later on, we can also modify the output that the AI will provide to us. So I'm about to finish my prompt. Let me just finish it up. Okay, so just to quickly summarize, we are telling the AI that grant applicants can submit their grant request for these various types of grants, and it would require an approval from the grant officer before the funds are dispersed. So if we want to, we can even describe our business logic and rules inside here. So if you have rules such as not requiring explicit human approval if the amount is below a certain amount, you can even feel free to do that, but this would suffice for now. So let's just click save, and fingers crossed, our application should be generated very shortly. So just to preface, nothing here has been pre-made or simulated beforehand, and this is now the output that we get from our AI. So let's just quickly validate the app itself. So as we take a look at the process, we can see this is the process that has been automatically generated, and the AI itself understands context. So as you can see, we have the grant applicant who submits the request. We have the grant officer that can submit it for approval and make specific decisions to either send it back for clarification, and depending on that result, it will send it off and notify the grant applicant for the approval status itself. So we can already see that it is doing the majority of the work for us on the business process. Now, let's just also quickly take a look at our grant request form. So as you can see in here, since we did not specify any of the form fields, it gives us what we can expect most, such as the applicant itself, the type of grant, the amount of the grant, and the description about it. So with that said, since we already have our application generated, we can now continue to refine it from now onwards. So let's refine our form for a little bit. So let's say the applicant itself, if we want to, we can simply select from our existing users. So at this point, we are going to simply modify the application to suit our specific needs. And if we want to, let's say, add in a date to know when is this request being made, I can also just do that. So I can simply drag in another field, call it as date of request, apply the change, and there we go. So we have our application as what we need right now. Okay. So with that said, how do we now take this application and have it integrated with Hedera's features? So the feature specifically that I want to integrate today is called the Hedera Consensus Service. Basically, for any grants that has been approved in this application, I want it to record it on the blockchain so that it is publicly transparent, it is fairly ordered, and it's also auditable by anybody in the public. So to get our apps ready to be integrated with Hedera, first we need to configure it to use a specific configuration. With that said, I'm going to use the Hedera backend default backend configurator, and it's going to ask us for our operator ID and key. If you have not created a testnet account, you can go ahead and create one on the Hedera testnet portal. And once you have it, all you need at this point is your private key and your account ID to get started. So I'm just going to paste it in here. Now for the backend service, we have the option to also make use of other third-party services if we wish to, but in this case, we'll leave it by its default, and we will leave it on the testnet since we are using simulated funds rather than real-world assets. So once we have done this and save, we are now ready to create our applications with Hedera. So coming back to the builder over here, first of all, let's change up our process. So first of all, let's take a look. We can see that we can modify some of the components in here where if the grant officer approves a grant request, we want it to write a message to a topic on the Hedera decentralized ledger. Now, there are several ways that we can create our topics and submit messages. The topics itself, it can be based on, let's say, a specific category like healthcare or social aid, or it can even be based on a specific government branch or a specific time. It really is up to you how you want to manage your topics and messages. So with that said, I'm going to come back to the App Studio first, and let's enhance our form. So for example, the grant type in here, right now it is a text field, but how do we have it as selectable options that our own grant officers can add in and remove at any time? So with this, I'm going to first add another form. And with this, I'm going to call this category, just to make it clear. And for the table name itself, I'm going to use a descriptive table name and click Save. Okay, so now we've arrived at the form builder. Let's rename this section quickly. We will call this grant category. And for the grant category itself, well, first of all, we need the name of the category. So we'll call this name. Now, since later on, we're going to store some additional details about this grant and categorize our grant requests via their categories, we can also add in additional text fields so we can be transparent to the audiences here. So for example, the most important field in here is the topic ID. I'm going to click accept and apply the change. Now, in most part, this should be sufficient for a grant category. Of course, we can feel free to add in any fields that we wish to in here. And to help us speed up the app creation, we are also going to make use of the app generator to help us generate a CRUD component. Okay, so once we have done this, we can now come back. We can notice that a list has already been generated for us, and the UI itself has already been updated. So if you notice, if I were to launch the app right now, I am seeing this app from the perspective of end users. So if I were to click on Manage Category, I can already see my form. So step 2, we are going to now add another process to help us create those topics. So I'm going to click on Add Process in here. And for the process name, let's make it clear. Create topic on category. All right, so for the variable ID itself, we can also just add in as many workflow variables as we need to. Now, for this process in here, well, we only need it to be relatively simple, where once we submit a new category, it creates a new topic based on that categories so that we can submit messages to the correct topics. So in this case, I'm going to select the starting point where the form is the category itself and apply the change. And for this tool in here, now we are going to rename it first. So in this case, I'll just call this create topic. And for the mapping here, there are various tools that we can take advantage of from the Hedera integration pack, whether when it comes to mint tokens, or if it comes to managing your tokens KYC, and all sorts of things. And in this case, we'll make use of the topic management tool, and we can submit messages, update topics, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I'm going to select create topic. Now for the admin key itself, I'll leave it to the operator so that the operator has permission to continue to modify the topic if necessary. Now, if we want to set it as a private topic, we can also do that where it generates a submit key so that not anybody in the public can do it. But in this case, I'll leave it as a public topic for transparency purposes. So in this case, all we need to do now is just store the response appropriately. So first, I'm going to apply the change and save this process first. Okay, so once I've done this, I can now come back and configure it accordingly. There we go. All right, so once we created that topic, we still need to save that value into a form. So in this case, I can also drag in another tool to help us chain multiple automated system functions together. And I'll make this a simple name. I'll just say update form data. And for the mapping itself, I'll make use of a tool called update form data. Okay, so for the field itself, it will be the topic ID. Now for the value itself, we want the topic ID to be resurfaced into our form data. So I'll make use of the property assistant in this case to help me dynamically fill in that value for me. And there we go. Once we click insert, apply the change, and click save. Okay, so we're very close now to seeing how we can create topics on the Hashgraph Application Studio. So I'm going to come into the UI builder this time to incorporate that component into our UI. So here is the UI builder. The experience is very familiar, where you just drag and drop your components into our UI. And in the case of our category, I'll just drag run process in here and select the process that I've just created. Give it a meaningful name. So I'll say create new category. Oh, I accidentally put it on caps lock. Okay. All right, new grant category. That's good. Apply the change. And click save. Okay, so we have already incorporated our first component. Let's now try it out from the end user's perspective. So coming in here as the end user, I can just refresh. Changes are applied instantly on any applications you create. There's no need to recompile, nothing like that. So for this first run category, let's say this is for healthcare. And when I were to click submit, we should see a topic ID appear here. So I'll click submit, give it a few seconds to talk to the Hedera ledger. And when it comes back, we can now see a topic ID has indeed been generated for us. And this is a valid topic ID that you can even see right now on the Hedera testnet. So I'm going to go ahead and just create one more over here. Okay, so at least we have a few more choices to go with other than just a grant type, single grant type. So now we got healthcare, we have arts. If we want to, we can always feel free to come back and add more categories. So we are done with the first part. Let's now come back to our original grant request form to incorporate our new grant type. So in this case, I'm now going to drag in a select box in here, and I'm going to replace this field here called grant type. So I'm going to copy the ID. Now, since I don't need this text field, I can just remove it for now and replace. Okay, grant type. Now, since now in here, I can choose where am I loading this data from. I'm going to load it from an existing form that I created just now, which is the category form. For the label itself, let's say I want it to be the name of that category. So I'll apply the change. And now I can just click on preview to see how it would have worked. There we go. We can now select our grant type from this form. So we're satisfied with the design. We can go ahead and click save. Now, later on, when we submit messages, how can we record the transaction ID into our form? Similarly, we can also make use of components available in the form builder. So to make it easier or visible for everyone to see, I'm going to add another new section, and I'll call this on-chain data to make it obvious. And for this portion in here, we can just set it as read only since it's not necessary to modify. And I'm just going to drag in a plain text field so that it's just visible to everyone. And for this, I'll call this the submit message transaction ID. Okay. And later on, if we want to easily inspect it, I can also make use of the Hedera Explorer link component within the integration package to easily check this on my favorite ledger explorers. So in here, I can simply configure accordingly. Now, if you want to, we can also modify the labels to make it more clear. I can say verify message on Explorer. Okay, so we have already added a convenience button in here and click Save. Excellent, so we're already very close. In just about under 15 minutes, we are almost be able to integrate a fully functioning app that works with Hedera consensus service. So I'll now come into the grant disbursement process in here. Now, rather than sending out an email to notify approval, this time I would like to simply send out a message to a topic. So in this case, I'm going to borrow this tool over here and simply overwrite it. So I'm going to say this is a submit message to topic. And for the mapping itself, once again, I'm going to make use of the Hedera topic management tool. And this time we will submit a message to a topic. Now for the topic ID in here, we can make use of the property assistant once again to help us dynamically fill in these values in here. So in this case, I'm going to pull the value from a specific form. And let's say I would like to pull from the category, the topic ID. Now the record ID itself in here, we can also continue to nest these variables within each other to help us retrieve the correct value. So in this case, I can say grant request by the grant type and click insert. Okay, so we have the first part here correct for the topic ID. Now the messaging here, it can be pretty flexible. It can be in JSON format if you want to. It can even be in absolute plain English if that is what you want. So why not? Let's try to type it in plain English. So the grant type of something.
Justin.
Okay. Yes, Andrew, go ahead.
I just want to take a moment to allow people to realize the power of the process builder. I just want to highlight the fact that those processes that were there, they were generated by the generative AI model. However, those processes can be customized to any business processes. And the processes can even include inputs from other outside systems. So it may be a process that involves writing to an external relational database or retrieving data from an outside source. It may be a process that requires validation from different degrees or levels of managers before a message could be sent to the blockchain, to the Hedera decentralized ledger. So you have full flexibility to add many more lanes and process nodes, activities in your business workflow using Joget.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for the quick add-on description. So I'm just about almost done configuring the message part. I'm just going the extra mile to make it even more interesting. So in here, I'm basically trying to put it in plain English. You see all these notations with the hash symbols. These are also called hash variables. All this will be automatically filled in by the App Studio on runtime. So it's as essentially the grant type of a specific grant with the amount of X amount is granted to this name of the applicant's name. That is, in a nutshell, what is basically happening. So I'm going to apply the change. Okay, we're done, almost done configuring. Now for the grant disbursement in here, I'm going to click edit and I'm going to add another variable. This time I want to track the message transaction so we can track it later on Ledger. So I'm going to add a new variable and click save. And once we've done that, I'm going to come back down here and store the response of the transaction ID to submit message transaction ID. And since we also want to surface this data to the form, we can also simply do that by adding one more tool in here to do that for us. So we can just click end. And for the properties in here, I'll name it also similarly. And for this, I'll simply select update from data. So it would surface the data to our grant request form in here. So there we go for the value. Similarly, I will make use of the property assistant to help me do that. Submit message transaction ID. Yep, that sounds about right. And apply the change and click save. Okay, so at this point, we have already done the modifications necessary for grant disbursement. Let's see how it looks like when we try this out in runtime. So I'm going to click on submit, a new grant. And for the applicant's name, I can just say, well, myself, or I can just do it for Kat, one of the users available in the platform. Let's say I'm submitting a grant type for healthcare. For the date of request, I can just key in the current date. For the amount, let's just put something obvious. The description, this is a live test. Now, when I click submit, nothing is going to happen just yet. So it's going to go to the grant officer. So as I can see in the inbox, since I am the admin user, I can simply review my own grant request and approve it myself. So I can go in here and check it out. And from the process status indicator, I can even see what is supposed to happen right now. So me as an end user, I'm not lost in between the multiple activities that could have happened within a grant request process. And with that said, when I click approve, if I'm not mistaken, there's one more activity that I would need to submit to disperse the actual grant. So this was one of the activities in here. So let's assume that grant is dispersed. So when I hit complete, we should now see a transaction ID appear. So I'll provide it a few seconds for the app to do its work. And there we go. It has been successfully submitted. And when I go to my closed request, we should be able to see there's a transaction that has already occurred. Now, if I were to take a look on this transaction on the Explorer, I can simply click on this button and it takes us to HashScan. And as you can see, this is not a pre-simulated event. This was actually done on a testnet right just now. And if we were to inspect our message, we can see it has already concatenated all the necessary information. So it now reads as a claim sentence. This grant type of healthcare with the amount of 256 is granted to the name of this person, Kat. So there we go. That's a very quick overview of how we can quickly integrate with the Hedera consensus service and create blockchain applications with speed and agility. But it doesn't just stop there. So now that we already have an app that talks with the Hedera ledger, what else can we do with speed? So I'm going to show you from the UI perspective. Let's say we want to change up the look and feel of this UI. We can go to our UI builder. And I can simply go to settings, and there's several different themes I can choose from. I'm just going to select one of them, and I'll leave it at the default color palette, although there are several that we can choose from. If you need to modify, such as the background, the sidebar color, we can do it all from the configurations in here. There's a lot of them to tinker around. And when I click save,
the other thing I think we should add is that all the applications are progressive and mobile ready by default. So they run on Android, they run on iOS by default, and we've taken advantage of that lots.
Yep, that's also a good point. I would like to quickly show also. So not only we can quickly modify the UI to our precise liking, as you can see over here, it can even conform nicely to all mobile screen sizes by default. So you don't have to create the UI essentially twice, right? If it's not necessary. Any applications you create on the App Studio is automatically mobile responsive by default. And not only that, all applications you create itself is also PWA ready by default, essentially being able to install on your mobile devices directly from the browser, which in turn will support capabilities such as background synchronization, offline capabilities, and so on and so forth. Now, there's one more point I also wanted to touch on about. Now that we have modified the UI to our liking, I would like to show you how we can also perform integration. So as we can already see from the standpoint of the App Studio, we can integrate inwards very easily. But how do we also allow third-party software to integrate from us? So if we want to now perform integration outwards, we can now make use of a component called the API Builder. So let's say we want to share information from our list, or to be able to allow third-party people to participate in the grant disbursement process that we have created. We can use the API Builder for that. So for this, I'm going to just give this a simple name in here. And for the API Builder component, there's many components that we can incorporate. For now, I'll drag in a list. And let's say I would like to share all of the grant requests that has occurred. And I'm also going to drag in a process API and allow people to participate in the grant disbursement process. At this point, I only need to enable functions that I require. Anything not necessary, leave it off for security purposes. And then I can quickly try it out by previewing the API. So from here, we can see the Swagger document is automatically generated for us. And to see in action, we can just expand any of these functions, click on try it out. I'll leave all the filters empty by default. And when we click execute below here, we can see all the data in here has these informations. So now you, as the third-party user, all you need to do is simply take the sample response, take the request URL, the curl command, send it to your third-party developers, and they'll know exactly how to integrate your application. So this is just to view the data from the list. From processors, it works the same way. They can simply call an API, and the part about being integrated with Hedera, it doesn't even have to be exposed to third-party users. It can even be completely transparent to any third-party integrators that wants to interact with your blockchain application. So that is the API Builder. Now, before I quickly wrap up the demo session, there's one more feature that I would like to show everyone here. So all applications, by default, they also come with the APM, or Application Performance Management feature by default. So with this, you can even track all of the pages within your app. You can check their average response times. You can see any slow traces or queries, service calls that your applications are making. So this gives you very deep down, low-level information about how your apps are performing. Not only that, if we want to go one level even higher, we can also perform a governance health check by a matter of a click of a button, or we can even hold it if you wish to check it in regular intervals. And what the governance health check feature does is it just checks the entire instance, all of your apps that you've created, and it gives you this simple report in plain English. So it tells you metrics about your performance. It tells you about quality assurance, if you have any erroneous app designs or naming conventions, any missing plugins. It also reports on security aspects such as your authentication, or if you have any processes that you may have not secured, and so on and so forth. And if you want to address it immediately, you can just click View, and it takes you directly to where the component is for you to amend it to be able to follow best practices in terms of security, quality assurance, and performance. So that, in a nutshell, is the governance health check. I know that there is a ton more features available in the Hashgraph Application Studio, but we're on the top of the hour, so I would like to hand the controls back to Penny to go for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Justin, for the walkthrough. And that wraps up our demo session. We are now opening the floor to our audience, and let's see what are the questions that the audience has for us. The first question, this is for you, Justin. How can we customize the UI of the dApps?
All right, so great question over there. Just now, if you may have missed it, we can easily modify the look and feel of our apps via the UI builder. To add on a little bit more, when we modify the UI, it's not just limited to the color scheme or or just the general theme. The theme itself is also highly extensible. So if you want to, you can go no code by matter of clicking, choosing your styles, or you can even go low code where you can write your own snippets of CSS and JavaScript for your custom animations, or you can even go pro code if you really need to customize on a deeper level to create theme plugins. So there really is no limits to your customizations. Good question.
Thank you very much. So the second question, what are the key considerations for a successful implementation of dApps? I would like to pass this to Andrew and Justin. What are your thoughts on this?
Andrew, go ahead. I'll let you take the floor first.
Yeah. The key considerations for a successful implementation, I think you really need to have a good sense of what your application requirements are, what you want your application to do. But having said that, I would say that Joget probably provides the most flexible environment that I've seen, particularly when dealing with distributed ledgers that don't allow you to delete or update data. It has the most flexible environment for manipulating your workflows and solving business problems quickly without relying on massive code-based rewrites. It's very effective at going from specification to the final application. Very useful.
Okay. Do you have anything to add on, Justin?
I think Andrew pretty much echoed my thoughts over there. So I think that's pretty accurate already.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
agree.
you for the answer. Okay. So moving on to the next question that we have. How do you see Joget making it easy for anyone who wants to build a dApp? Andrew, this is for you.
I think one of the things that people underestimate is the complexity of setting up the actual architecture and also the selection of the tech stack when making a decision on which application to build. Joget abstracts all of this while still enabling you to build an enterprise-grade application that runs and works. It allows you to focus on solving the business problem. And I think that's actually one of the best attributes of this. It means management and your clients can have direct visual input, and you, as a system integrator or developer, can actually make changes, oftentimes in real time, on the fly, without worrying about compilations or redistributing or redeploying. You just solve the problem and your software works. And I think that's a very, very powerful selling point.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So the next one on the list, what would be the ideal implementation use cases for system integrators to make the best use of Joget to capitalize on efficiencies? Sabrina and Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
Maybe I'll start. Yeah. So for system integrators, I think it's a great pre-sale tool because you're able to build some like really quick POCs or use it for workshops. So you're able to do something very quickly and maybe close some deals faster because you're able to do some of the work upfront. So I see that as a very good sales tool. But of course, that's just the start, right? You can actually use it to develop something that is production grade. So it can really be a tool that is usable like across the project development cycle.
From my side, I'm in full agreement with Sabrina here. I would also say that this tooling is particularly useful and powerful when it comes to form-based applications. I really think any application that is supposed to capture data, process data, run that data through a series of levels and workflows And that is going to be critical whenever you're talking about building a decentralized application that writes data to the blockchain, because the blockchains and decentralized ledgers are very good for many things. Immutable data, keeping data safe, making sure it can't be changed. What they're not good at is processing massive amounts of garbage data. They're not data stores. And I think the nature of the workflows, the process engine, the close integration with Hedera, the speed of development, and the visual element makes Joget, the Hashgraph Application Studio, incredibly effective for large-scale and small-scale form-based workflow-driven applications.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer and for the sharing, Sabrina and Andrew. And that wraps up our Q&A session for now. So with that, that's it for the Q&A. And before we go, we would like to share some of the resources where you will be able to make use of. So if you go over to our website, www.hashgraphappstudio.com, you will be able to find these step-by-step video tutorials that will walk you through how to generate a Hedera account, send transactions, mint tokens, mint NFT, burn tokens, and how you can create a token swap app on the Hashgraph App Studio. And if you would like to learn more about the Joget platform and low-code, no-code technology, feel free to head over to the same website and submit a voucher request with the request code Hedera, and we will get back to you as soon as we receive your submissions. So same step, we have now come to the end of the session. Once again, thank you very much, Sabrina and Andrew, for joining us today, and again for your truly enlightening insights on Hedera Hashgraph and the Hashgraph Association. We appreciate your sharing on how the Hashgraph Application Studio opens up new opportunities for implementations in the government and the public sector. Also, Justin, for your demo on the Hashgraph App Studio. Thank you very much for showing us in action on the incredible synergy between Joget, low-code, no-code, and Hedera Hashgraph, and how the platform can help to simplify complex tasks all the way from Hedera consensus services, accounts creation, assets transfer, token management, and many more. Not to forget about the attendees here for staying till the very end with us. We really appreciate it. One last thing before we end the session. Sabrina, Andrew, and Justin, do you have anything to share with the audience before we wrap up the session?
Pretty much the only word I have to say is I can't wait to see the ideas that the community and our dear audiences can come up with to create blockchain applications on the Hashgraph Application Studio. I'm curious to see what use cases you can solve with the Hashgraph App Studio.
And personally, I'm very excited to see the AI generated feature, which is a new one. So that's really cool to see this in action. And yeah, it's really nice to see. It's already quick to develop on Joget, but it's just become quicker and more efficient. So really great job on that, guys.
From my side, I echo Sabrina's thoughts and Justin's thoughts. I think the AI is really cool. I'm also excited to see the projects that are developed. And I think both Sabrina and I would be super excited if the projects are developed and deployed into the marketplace. We'd love to be able to provide support in any way that we can from the perspective of the Hedera ecosystem. So please keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the sharing. So before we go, please don't forget to fill up the feedback form directed to you after the webinar, as we would love to hear from you about your webinar experience. With that, we will see you again in the next webinar. Thank you everyone and have a nice day.